Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this brief introduction to some of the goings on at the King's School. I'm going to run you through a few bits of information which I hope you will find very helpful as your son or daughter prepares for their time at the King's School. I am Mike Garrick, I am Deputy Head Student Support, and I've highlighted on the screen there this business about support, because for me that is absolutely crucial. My role is to make sure that I'm coordinating all the different people who are going to provide that care and that support to your son or daughter as they come up to the King's School. And it's incredibly important that your young person is happy. And that's more challenging at the moment because of the situation we find ourselves in, but we want them to be happy. And the good news is that when we did a survey last year, as you can see, 94% of parents strongly agreed that my child enjoys school. And if they enjoy school, then generally speaking, they will make progress and they will learn. And that's what we all want them to do. So I'm going to run you through a few different bits and pieces, as I said, and I'm going to talk to you about a few key people and some of the routines and some of the other minutiae behind the school, if you like. So, the process is going to be different. Normally, we were doing a variety of other things, but the process is going to be different this year. And as you can see, and as I've already written to you in the letter, we are unable to bring Year 6 in. We are unable to meet with you face-to-face, but we want to develop those clear lines of communication so that your son or daughter and you feel confident and ready for when the students come back to school. And we very, very much hope that that will be in September, but we need to wait and see on that. I'm going to talk to you about the tutor and the role of the tutor, how crucial that is, but what I'm also going to do is introduce you to a few other key people too. So that first group of people are these four heads of house. So Mrs. Argent Wentz is in charge of Coleridge, Mr. Colt is in charge of Kennaway, Mrs. Jacobs is in charge of Patterson, and Mr. Dodds is in charge of Raleigh. Four very experienced heads of house. They are incredibly caring people, using that word again, but incredibly competitive people as well, because the house system, as you will begin to understand as your son or daughter starts here, is incredibly important for all sorts of different reasons. Now, you will also have heard through the letter that your son or daughter has been allocated a tutor in one of those houses. So we have four lower school groups in each house, 4 in Coleridge, 4 in Kennaway, 4 in Patterson and 4 in Raleigh. So these 4 tutors work very closely with the heads of house to make sure that your son or daughter has settled and is doing well. So the students see their tutor every morning and every afternoon of every day. In the morning, it's a quick 5 minutes, register, hand out some notices. In the afternoon, sometimes they stay with the tutor for longer, sometimes they might go off to an assembly. But it's that chance to build that relationship and work very closely with them. The tutor monitors well-being. The tutor monitors progress. The tutor monitors attendance and behaviour. And those are all issues that I'm going to come back to as we go through. We know that those 4 things are incredibly important. And the tutor has a key role in supporting your child to make sure that they are being successful in those areas. Now, I mentioned before that the house is multifaceted. So it's the caring side, with that tutor and that head of house are looking out for them, for that particular student, but at the same time it's incredibly competitive. And you can see some of the things that we do. So we have some big events that go on during the year. So we've got some examples here of house dance that goes on just before Christmas. We would have been, the end of just around lockdown, been doing a house musical, but unfortunately this year we had to cancel that because students weren't in school, which was incredibly frustrating. We have things like Sports Day. But in addition to that, there are house events that are going on right through the year. So there are sporting events that start in the autumn term and go through to the end of the summer term. For example, at the moment we are having a virtual house photography competition. So there are lots of different things that young people can get involved with as part of their house, and it's really, really important they do. In fact, every day that your child is in school, they have the opportunity to contribute to the house. Because, as I'll explain in a little bit more detail later on, we award achievement points, which are house points, for good quality work, for progress, for working hard, those kind of things. And those totals all go into the grand total at the end of the year, when I have the pleasure and the privilege of reading out the scores, the house scores, in the sports hall to 1,000 people, and you could hear a pin drop as I'm about to read out those scores. There is that anticipation, because the house means so much. And winning the House Cup is really important to all the students in the school. Some other key people. So you can see at the top Mr Nicholson and Mrs Bunker. They are our two pastoral support workers. They work in student support, as do the other three people down the bottom, Mrs Marks, Mrs Lewis and Mrs Patterson. Now, the two people at the top, their role is to deal with anything that comes through the door. So it might be that if you've got a particular concern, you ring up, one of the first people you speak to will be Mr Nicholson or Mrs Bunker. For any students, when they have got concerns or issues, they go to student support. And what they do there is they go and speak to Mr Nicholson, they go and speak to Mrs Bunker, and they will try and work things out with them. So it could be that they've got lost, because people will get lost in those first few weeks. It might be that they've lost a book or a piece of equipment. It might be that they've hurt themselves. It might be they've had a fallout with a friend. It could be that they're feeling really sad. So whatever the reason, if students go to student support, these two wonderful people will help them and support them and try and get them back on track. And they obviously work very closely with the heads of house and also the form tutors as well. These three people have slightly different roles in student support. They are equally as approachable, and sometimes they will be the person that your son or daughter goes to. They will help, they will support, they will guide, they will point them in the right direction. So student support is an incredibly important part of the school. We also have student leaders who do a variety of different things. So, for example, at the moment, we're in a bit of a limbo, because we started appointing our prefects for Year 11 just before lockdown, and we're going to be interviewing those students when they come back in September, hopefully. We have house leaders who do a fantastic job in running different activities within their houses. And we have the teen health group who work very closely with Mrs Elliott, who's in charge of personal, social and health education. And they've actually produced a separate video which you can watch, which is really to do with answering some of those key questions that Year 6s might have as they come up to secondary school, and try and just get rid of some of those myths that are out there. All these students, and we have got many other groups as well, are there to help and support young people. Just coming back to that theme of care. Now, the induction process has obviously been different this year. So Mrs Jacobs, she is in charge of this process, and she is the person who has got an enviable job of putting students into groups. And this started some time ago by collating information from primary schools. And because of the situation that we find ourselves in, we have had to work much more closely with the primary schools and be much more reliant on the primary schools than in previous years. So we have gone out to them, we've asked them for lots of different information, and we have asked them to help us to group students. So Mrs Jacobs will have allocated students to a house, which also combines the tutor group as I explained earlier. Now, they will be allocated on a family connection. So if you have an elder brother or sister who's been in that particular house, we will have allocated you to that particular house and one of the tutor groups they're in. Otherwise, you will have been allocated to a house just to try and balance out the numbers in the house and the various interests and those kind of things. The teaching groups are where students will spend more of their time. So this is where we have asked the primary schools, so if we think, for example, of Ottery Primary School, where we've got nearly 60 students coming up from, we have asked Ottery to group or subgroup those students into smaller groups, so that then Mrs Jacobs can put those smaller groups into the teaching groups. And what we've asked them to do is to make sure they've got at least one friend who is in that group who will therefore be with them for the majority of their lessons when they come up to King's. So, just to re-emphasise, they are mixed ability groups, they have a mix of genders, and we try and mix the students up from different primary schools. So we don't have 30 students from Ottery in one tutor group, 20 students from West Hill in another group, those kind of things. We mix things up because we think it's really, really important that you maintain that support network of friends you've had before, but also meet new friends and make new relationships as well. We're also very mindful of the fact that there are a lot of people who come up on their own. So I think there are 16 students who are coming up on their own from a primary school, and there are a number who are coming up with one other person. So again, we're very mindful of that and try and make sure that they are put in groups with like-minded people. Skills for learning. Now, Mrs. Farrand is our SENCO. She's also a fellow deputy head teacher of mine. She does an absolutely fantastic job with students with special educational needs in her particular team. I've put her email address on there, and I'll come back to that in the end. So if there are any particular issues that you need to speak to Mrs. Farrand about, you can contact her. Okay, some other things that you need to know about. So I'm going to run through a few bits and pieces, starting with things that students often ask, and that is the issue of things like behaviour and attendance. So, we're a very positive school. We are very lucky to have students who come to this school who are incredibly well behaved. Not perfectly behaved, there are always some issues that are going on, but that are generally very well behaved. We don't have major behaviour issues, which is great. And one of the reasons we do that is because we try and build a really positive culture. So we reward students on a regular basis when they do well. So as I mentioned before, they get achievement points if they work hard, or if they produce outstanding work, or if they make good progress, etc., etc. And as I said before, those points all go towards their house totals, but they're also individual totals that we monitor, and you can monitor, as I'll explain later, through the EduLink app, which you'll be able to download. So you'll be able to see when your son or daughter gets achievement points. We award commendations. So here's Sam with his commendation certificate. This was awarded to him earlier this year. And we award head teachers commendations, but also departmental commendations as well. And we try and celebrate those as much as possible. So that's the positive side of things, but obviously we know that all students don't always behave perfectly, and I'm sure during lockdown there might have been the odd tantrum at home or difficulty at home trying to get students to do schoolwork. Sometimes we have those same issues in school. So we give a warning, we give a strike. So if a student isn't doing what we've asked them to do, they are awarded a strike. That is not recorded, that strike, but if it gets to 2 strikes or 3 strikes, that will be recorded and there will be a sanction put in place. And down the bottom here, I put the D word, detentions, because if a student does get 2 strikes or 3 strikes, they will get a detention. And you will be notified of that through EduLink. I've brought in attendance and punctuality here as well. Again, we reward excellent attendance, and we do that every term with certificates. It's really important that students are in school every day, particularly having missed a big chunk of school in Year 6. We want every student here every day, but we accept that sometimes that is not possible due to illness, injury, those kind of things. We ask that you contact us, and I'll come back to that. But it's important that students understand that we expect them to be in every day, we reward it. But if they are late to school, there will be a sanction. So they'll have a lunchtime detention if there isn't a good reason for that, which you haven't let us know about. Uniform. On the previous slide, it said high expectations about behaviour and attendance, and it's the same with uniform. So you can see that the uniform is very smart, and it consists of a blazer, a blue shirt, a tie in the house colours, skirt which should be knee length, trousers, and then shoes, which I'll come on to in a minute. I would like to emphasise this knee length with the skirts. That's a really, really important issue. I would also like to emphasise that in terms of jewellery, 1 small set of studs and a watch. This is all in the uniform sheet which you had in the booklet which was sent out early this term and emailed out last week. And crucially, name everything. Every day, students, you can imagine what it's like with over 1,000 students leave things lying around. If they're named, we can get it back to them, or we're more likely to get it back to them. If they're not named, it becomes much more problematic. So students have to take ownership of their equipment. That's the first thing, and that's a big step up from primary school because it's very different here. But at the same time, if it's named, it makes it much easier for us to return things. So please make sure everything, including shoes, bags, coats, are all named, please. Shoes should be plain, leather type formal shoes that are black. Not mixed, plain black. These are some of the styles that we suggest. This information is also on the website. And these are things that wouldn't be acceptable. So no boots, no trainers, no canvas shoes, no casual shoes or raised heels. If you're in doubt, as someone has already done last week, give us a ring, send us a picture, we can look at them and we can advise you as to whether they are the right type of shoe. Obviously, if you do that in the holidays, it's less likely that we'll be able to get back to you, but we will do our best. But if you do that sooner rather than later, we can let you know. What we don't want to happen is for students to turn up in September with shoes that aren't appropriate, and then we have to say, you can't wear those shoes, because that's really not the way we want to start. So let's get this right from the start. PE kit, again, is listed in your booklet that you've had, and you can see that both boys and girls actually wear the blue shirt, and this is a new shirt that we brought in last September. It's got the logo on it, sky blue shirt, looks really, really smart. Black shorts, white socks, and then there is an outdoor kit for boys and girls as well. So the boys have a rugby shirt, the girls have an overtop as well, which the boys can buy too, but that's for when it's colder and wet and those kind of things. And if it's anything like we had last winter, they will need that extra layer in order to keep themselves warm. Shin pads and mouth guards are essential. We don't know what PE is going to look like from September yet. We really have got no idea. But at some point they will need shin pads and they will need mouth guards, or else they won't be able to do some of the activities that we want to do. And there is no jewellery worn in PE lessons. Suppliers. So we've had 2 suppliers, and I sent information out about this last week when I sent the email. So most parts of the uniform can be bought from most shops or supermarkets, but there are some specific items specific to the King's School. So Honiton Sports and Thomas More stock these items. The information was sent out last week, and you can follow that up with them. Homework, big issue. Big issue for parents, big issue for students. You will be given a homework timetable, or the students will be given a homework timetable when they come up to the school. Homework will vary from week to week. Homework will vary from day to day. Some days they will have more homework, some days they will have less homework. Some days there'll be a lot of writing, some days they might be reading or researching or whatever it might be. So it's going to vary hugely. All homework is set on EduLink, and I'll explain a little bit more about EduLink again in a minute. There's a mark on EduLink, a symbol on EduLink called, which funny enough is called homework, and that is where teachers set the homework for parents and students to look at. So parents, you can monitor everything that's being set and you can check with them that it's being done. What they also do is they write their homework in their planner. And their planner, students will ask them to write it in and on the day that it's set with the date that it's due to come in. So we've got EduLink and we've got the planner because we feel that double system works really, really well. If you've got concerns about homework, please get in contact with the tutor and we'll try and alleviate those concerns and follow anything up. So I mentioned the planners before. We're going to give them planners. They cost us a lot of money. We think they're incredibly important, but they have to look after them. And if they lose them, then they have to buy a new one. So it's really important that they do keep hold of it. We'll also give them exercise books. All that is taken care of. What students need to make sure they've got are things like pens and pencils and rulers. A calculator is essential for maths and science, and a bag to put everything in. because some days there'll be a lot of stuff to bring into school. Now, in terms of the pencil case or the pens, pencils and ruler, some people just have the basics. Other people have a huge pencil case with loads of coloured pens, loads of highlighters, those kind of things. Now again, we don't know what things are going to look like in September, and we will let you know more when we know more. But at the moment, we're saying to students that they can't share equipment. So this equipment list might increase a little bit as we get towards September. Mobile phones and headphones, we are quite happy for young people to bring a mobile phone into school. That is fine. But if we see it, or if we hear it, it will be taken off that student, it will be placed in the front office, and a parent will have to come and collect it. That is the bottom line. So, off and away. Phones are switched off before they come in the school gate. They are put away so that we don't see them and we don't hear them, and there isn't a problem. That also gives you peace of mind that on the way home that they can give you a ring if there's an issue or anything like that. We also say no headphones. So again, if we see headphones, they will be taken off the young person and you'll be asked to come and collect them. Transport, really important issue again at the moment. Transport is changing because of the social distancing, and again, we don't know what this is going to look like in September. So there are various things that you need to be aware of. Students can access the site from 2 gates. The Cadhay Lane gate near the sports centre is not open to the students in the morning and the afternoon. Okay, that is not open to students in the morning and afternoon. So students have to be dropped off at Barrack Road or down near the coach park. So that is the way that they enter the school. Now, obviously, if you live in Ottery, we would encourage as many people as possible to walk or cycle to school. And there's a very safe path from the Land of Canaan up to school, over the bridge. If you are driving your son or daughter to school, we ask that you park away from the site. For example, you could park in the Land of Canaan and they could walk in from there, because it can get very congested. That's one of the reasons why we say don't park in Cadhay, or don't drop off in Cadhay Lane, because we end up with traffic jams up there. Likewise, down near the coach park, we've got a number of coaches coming into the school. If you're around that particular area, it can get very, very busy in the mornings. We ask that you don't drop off or pick up from the hospital, because that's their space. Find somewhere else at a convenient location, drop your son or daughter off, and they can walk in from there. Bus passes, if you're having transport on the bus, will be posted out during the summer holidays. And just to remind you that if you live in Exeter or on the route from Exeter or from Honiton, there is a stagecoach service which drops off outside the school and runs as normal. Now, as I mentioned at the start, communication is incredibly important. Now, I want to thank you all, or the vast majority of you, for giving us all the information we need, returning all the forms that we need. So we've got in most cases phone numbers, email addresses and postal addresses. But if these change, we need to know. And it's incredibly frustrating when we're trying to get hold of parents and we can't. So please update us if there are any change in circumstances that we need to be aware of. Now, I've mentioned EduLink a few times, and those of you with older children at school will know about EduLink. It is an app that you can download and you can use. You don't have to download the app, but it makes it much easier for you, I think, if you do. It's also the communication vehicle for us to email and to message you, which we use, and it has a variety of different bits and pieces. So on EduLink, if you've got the app, you can look at your students' timetable to see what they've got. They can do the same, because they can download the app too. You can monitor their behaviour and achievement and see how well they've done, or see if they've got any strikes, or whatever it might be. You can monitor their attendance and see if they've got a late mark, or things like that. And as I said before, you can look at homework too. Okay? So EduLink is a really important communication tool, and we will let you know towards the end of the first week there in school. We will give you those login details so that you have got a really clear idea of how to download the app and how to make the app work. We've got a fantastic website. It's really good. It's got lots of information on, and we will encourage you to go and have a look at lots of different bits of that website to find out more information. We are very high profile on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook and on Instagram. So again, we would ask that you follow us on those particular mediums, whichever you use, and you will get regular updates and lots of things that go on through those particular channels. And every Thursday, Mrs. Price in the front office, she produces the Kings, which is a summary, a double-page summary, colour summary of things that have gone on in the week, the previous week or the previous couple of weeks. And again, it's a chance to celebrate lots of the good things that go in school, but also to give key messages out to parents and students as well. So communication is very, very important. Now, if in a normal induction week, when we have the students in for the week, when I get towards the end, I say, what's the best thing about the King's School? And many people say, the canteen. And again, normally, we would ask, or we would say, that students can use the canteen during the week so they get used to how it works, but also we invite parents and grandparents into school to see it as well and to experience it. And again, the overwhelming feedback from the parents is the food is very, very good. And it is. So a wide variety of meals and snacks are available, but students are very welcome to bring a packed lunch in as well. It's entirely up to you. You will have had information about this again in the pack that we sent out. And this thing here, the thumbprint, becomes very important because we use thumbprints to pay for the food that students buy in the canteen. And that can be at break or it can be at lunchtime. And it's a very quick method. They put their thumb on a sensor and it takes it from there. Obviously at the moment we're not using thumbprints because of the risk of infection, but I'm sure at some point we will get back to using them, and you have given us permission to be able to do that if you've returned those particular forms. If you don't want them to use a thumbprint, we can issue a card, and that might be what we do anyway in September, depending on the situation with infection. But obviously cards can get lost, which means it's a little bit safer to have a thumb that you use. We ask that parents load up their accounts online, and there is more information about that in the pack that we sent out. Now, you're coming to a school with 180 other students in the year group. You will know some of those, in some cases you will know a lot of those, but you won't know everybody. We want everyone to achieve their potential, and different people have lots of different strengths in lots of different areas. So therefore we put on lots of different clubs and activities that go on. So you've got some examples here. We've got textiles, we've got equestrian, we've got drama, we've got sport. There are loads of sporting things that go on. We've got science, we've got green team, and that is just to name a few. But this allows people to really develop their strengths, but it also allows people to meet other people within the year group and within other year groups, and to make new friends and relationships, and that's incredibly important. So again, we don't know what clubs are going to look like in September, but they will get going at some point. And we want young people to take part in those things, to really challenge themselves and develop interests and become more rounded people. And this is probably going to be very difficult to read, but this just lists the whole load of extracurricular clubs and house activities that year 7s and 8s have been involved with in the past couple of years. So it ranges from sign language club, to choir, to cross country, to futsal, to horse riding, to singing, to make a difference, to meditation and mindfulness, all sorts of different things. So there's a whole variety of different things that your son or daughter can get involved in. We also provide music tuition. Mrs. Mullinger is our head of music. She does an absolutely fantastic job in coordinating this. We will get further information to you. We'll put it on the website about how this goes about. And there was also something in the booklet that we sent out earlier this term about it. But if you're interested in lessons, the best thing to do is to contact Mrs. Mullinger, and she will be able to arrange that for you. Medical issues. We understand that there are some people that come up to school with medical conditions. I've already met virtually with Miss Michelle Parryman, who's our school nurse, and she's run me through a number of medical issues that apply to certain students in the school. I know that Mrs. Farron is also aware of those, and Mrs. Bunker is the person, the go-to person for medical issues. So I've shared all the information that I've got with Mrs. Bunker, but there'll be other things that we don't know about. So if there are particular medical issues pertaining to your son or daughter, we need to know. So please get in contact with us and let us know what those medical issues are. Illness and injury at school. So students do become ill, students do get injured. Again, we need to have your contact details because we don't have the space just to queue up students who are ill or injured. So we will be on the phone to you and we'll be asking you to collect them if we think they are too ill or too injured in order to stay in school. So please update those contact details. I mentioned attendance before. If your son or daughter is unwell and cannot attend school, and we do appreciate that being very, very rare, then you need to either email in or use the EduLink app or ring the absence line in order to inform us about that. And finally, if your son or daughter at any point is using medication that needs to be administered in school, that needs to be sent into school, please, and it needs to come in with the packaging on it so that we can see exactly what needs to happen, okay, and exactly how that medication should be administered. Mrs. Bunker, as I mentioned, she coordinates this side of things, and if there are particular medical issues, she will develop individual healthcare plans for those particular students, which we will share with other staff. PTFA, the PTFA are a fantastic group of people. We've got a really good core of people on the committee. They raise a huge amount of money, and this was just an opportunity to explain to you that they do all sorts of different things. For example, this is the Christmas fair that they organise end of November, beginning of December, but there are lots of other things they organise during the school year. And we would very much like to welcome new people to join the committee. And the AGM will take place in September, hopefully all being well, and we'll send some details out when we come to that. Now, I started with the word support and care, and there it is again. This is what's recognised by Ofsted the last time they came to visit us. The school takes great care of its students, and as a result, they feel extremely safe. Students feel safe, they will succeed, and that is what we want. So this care and support is absolutely crucial. Another word that I've used quite a lot of is communication, and there it is again. It's got to be a three-way partnership. So you need to communicate with us, we will communicate with you, and we have to have the young person at the central point of this, because ultimately it's all about them and their successful time at the King's School. So please, 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 if you've got any concerns, don't sit on them, don't post something on social media, get in touch with us, please, and we will do our best to try and support you. Now, there are a lot of contact details that I will post on the website as well, but I've included people like Mrs. Farrand, Mrs. Bunker for medical issues, Mrs. Jacobs for those general transition things, Mr. Nicholson and Mrs. Bunker in student support, Mrs. Mullinger for music. If there are any transport issues, Mrs. Patterson is the one that you need to contact, the 4 heads of house, and I've put my email address down the bottom as well. So please, 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 get in touch with us, and email is the easiest way at the moment. Because of the situation we find ourselves in, email us and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as we possibly can. So finally, what next? Well, you will hear from your tutor in the next few weeks. Your tutor will be in touch with you. Now, I've put up there, or another member of staff, because there are a couple of tutor groups where that particular tutor isn't employed by us at the moment. They're moving from a different school, or they're starting their teaching career. So it might be another member of staff, probably Mr. Nicholson or Mrs. Bunker, who might get in touch with you and make those initial phone calls. So there will be a phone call, and they will have a conversation with you as parents, but hopefully also with the child as well, so that we can just start to get to know them and find out a little bit about them. The tutor and or the head of house, again depending on the situation, will try and arrange and set up a Microsoft Teams meeting. So we want to try and do a virtual meeting for people in the tutor group if we possibly can. And we'll set that up for a couple of weeks' time. Please look on the website. Not only are you probably watching this video on the website, but there are a number of other videos. So there is a tour of the school video, so you can familiarise yourself with that. There is a video, as I mentioned before, from the Teen Health Group, and there are house videos as well from the heads of house about how their particular houses operate too. So lots of things to watch. Oh, and I should mention, of course, there is an introduction from the very important Mr. Gannon, the head teacher. And finally, as I've said to you before, normally we would expect to be seeing and meeting these young people before the summer holidays, and this year, unfortunately, it cannot happen. We are committed to trying to make sure that when the new Year 7s, the current Year 6s start at King's, we spend some time with them before the rest of the school, or most of the rest of the school, return as well. so that we have some form of induction where the school is a little bit quieter, if at all possible, where we can meet them and we can get to know them and they can get to know how this school works. Thank you ever so much for listening. If you have any questions, please do get in touch, as I've emphasised, and I look forward to meeting you and the children coming up as soon as it's possible. Thank you very much indeed.